Hey guys, welcome back. This is Sub LBC here doing another video update. And in this one here, we just wanted to show just a quick overview of how to deal with your rear differential. Now, if you, again, take this to a dealership to get done, they're going to charge you hundreds of dollars, and it's just not worth it, man. I mean, in fact, you want to avoid just about everything BMW tells you in regards to, what the money you should pay to do this, and even the type of fluid that they recommend that you use. So in any case, some of the tools you're going to need first and foremost is something like this. Although I don't actually use this for this job, but this here is a 14 millimeter hex key. You'll see it's really big. But the reason why I bought this is for a whole nother purpose. Although if you do have something like this, it will get the job done. But I highly recommend just getting a 14 millimeter, hex, to 1/2 inch, and then using a breaker bar, because that thing is on there really tight. And although, this, hex key probably will work, it's just, it's just a little bit more of a pain. And if you have a breaker bar, you can just get in there and just bust it loose instantly. And what's nice about this job is that you don't even technically need a jack. If you're, not too big and kind of slim, just get a piece of cardboard like this and just kind of slide on in there. And with the right tools, this thing comes out no problem. Now, one thing you'll notice with the rear differential is that there is no drain. There's just that fill plug there, which also acts as your drain. So in order to get all the fluid out of here, you're going to have to get an extractor. And I had mentioned this in previous videos. The one that I like to use that works really well for just about everything is this, Pittsburgh brand Harbor Freight extractor. And you can see that the extractor comes with the, the big thick orange tubes, and it also comes with the thin black tube. Now the thin black tube is probably the better one to use if you want to use attachments, but the problem with the black one is that it's going to take you a lot longer and a lot of pumps to get all the fluid out. Like, it's just like, like it can be a real pain, but sometimes you just need to have it. And I'll talk about that when we get to the whole transfer case area of the car, where things get a little more complicated. But one thing that I like to do that worked out really well for me is I made this little adapter. And where the hell is it? Did I put it in my pocket? Let's hope I did. Yes, I did. Okay, so one thing that can make your job a lot easier is to get this little deal. Now, this here is just a brass fitting that I got on Amazon. It's basically a 3/8 inch outer diameter barb on both ends. And it's made of brass, so it's nice and rugged. It can deal with everything. And then you want to go ahead and cut a piece of the tubing that comes with the extractor kit, and you want that length to be about reaching the base of the differential. Okay, and in my driveway I do have a slight rear incline or decline, and that's actually a good thing. It works to my favor, because that's going to try to get as much of the lubrication towards the back of the differential where I want to do it with my extraction. And you can see that right below the hole, it's kind of like a slant forward. So when this goes in, it kind of just rests just like that, and it gets all the way to the absolute lowest point of the differential. And this is really useful because when you're doing your extraction, you don't have to hunt around, with the smaller, skinnier tube, because that's not going to come at a straight down angle. That's going to want to just kind of reach above, and you're going to be hitting gears and hitting all kinds of stuff, and you're going to be poking around, and you can eventually find the perfect angle, where you're going to get a lot of the low fluid out, but it's going to take a lot more time, and it's just annoying. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to make the job quick and easy, then just get this attachment. Otherwise, you're going to be hunting around with the thin tube. But this is not a prerequisite. But let me tell you, what I'm saying, one thing that's great about this job is that you're going to know how well of a job you did when it's all said and done, based on the amount of fluid you can get out and how much more fluid goes back in. You know what I'm saying? You'll know exactly how well you did. Now, when it comes to fluid, you definitely do not want to use the BMW branded fluid. In fact, what I highly recommend is to go with this here. This is Redline. Redline makes some of the best lubricants in the world, guys. One of the 5 or 6 oil manufacturers that I would recommend to be used, again, in the appropriate application. But yeah, Redline is very well known for making some of the best lubricants in the world. And when it comes to differential, this is pretty much the go-to. So You can see this oil is a lot thicker than what you'll put in your engine. This is a 75W90, so this is really, really thick stuff. But again, this is what differentials and transfer cases need. And in this car specifically, you know, again, 2013 BMW X5 with the 3-liter turbo, you do want to use the 7590 for your rear differential and also for your transfer case. And assuming you're using the car normally, you should be able to get away with this servicing once every 50,000 miles is what I would recommend. I know some people say 60. Dealership and manufacturer will tell you it's lifetime, which is insane. But yeah, you can score this here for about $20 to $25, give or take. And it is definitely the oil that you want to use for your differential. So the process is very simple. You know, again, you just want to go ahead and break that hex bolt out, and then you know, go ahead and use your extractor. And if you're lucky enough to have this attachment, you're going to get a lot of fluid out, and you're going to get a lot of it out very, very quickly. And that's kind of what you want to go for. There's no reason to be laying down here, you know, for too long if you don't need to be. But yeah, once all the fluid is out, the next thing you want to make sure is that the car is on level ground when you start to do your fill. So in my case, you know, I just let the car just back onto the main street, you know, stop. It's not going to hurt anything if you're just rolling the car for a few feet without any gear oil in it. But obviously you don't want to drive it that way. You know, that's going to cause some major problems. But yeah, in any case, once you, you know, have the car on level ground, go ahead and, you know, flip your pump around, and then go ahead and put the input into here, and then just start pumping away and pumping away and pumping away. And if you do things absolutely perfect, right as you get to the tail end of this 1 liter, you'll start hearing it slurp a little bit, you know, like it's, you know, it's no longer like just fully saturated with fluid. And then you're going to start seeing a weeping or a very slow drip coming out of the fill hole, you know. And once you see that, you know that you are good to go. Now, in the process of pumping it full of this stuff, if it just starts gushing fluid out when you're halfway through, that just means you did not do a very good job of extracting the fluid. You know what I'm saying? Like if you've done a perfect job, you're going to pull almost a full quart out, or very close to it. You know, at least, or I should say maybe like, I don't know, 700 millirange, maybe a little more. But you'll know you did it correctly, because by the time you get to the tail end of this, you know, you might be scared, like, oh my God, I'm running out, it's not quite there. But then you'll start seeing the weeping and the dripping. And if you see that, then you know you did a really, really good job. However, if you're like barely past the halfway mark of extracting from this and fluid is already gushing out of the hole, then that just means you didn't get nearly enough of it out. And that's really where this, you know, attachment comes into play. You know, if you have this thing, you're going to get 100% of that fluid out every time. You know what I'm saying? It's a really, really simple job. You can get it done, you know, less than 15 minutes. And that's basically it. You know, you want to check your drip interval. If it's like, you know, the intervals are pretty wide, like it's not just drip, 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 you know, like it's not like any kind of consistent flow. You know, if you have good intervals between your drips, then it's good enough to seal up right there and right then and there at that point. I don't know what the specific tech or torque spec is to get this thing back up, but for me personally, since, you know, again, I do all the maintenance on my own cars, you want to have it tight, but not so tight to where it's going to be like a problem to get back off. And obviously you don't want to damage the you know, the fill cap or anything like that, but do want to make sure that your O-ring is nice and good, you know, still in good condition. Maybe even, you know, consider buying a new, you know, cap if you want to, although it's not really necessary in my opinion. As long as it, you know, torques up real good, stays on nice and tight, and no fluid comes out of it, you're good to go for the next 50,000 miles. Now, if you are towing heavy loads with your car, or you're just putting a ton of, you know, repeated, you know, pressure on the car, but I mean, towing I think is really the big thing. Then you're going to want to do this swap twice as much on the rear differential and on the transfer case as well, since those, you know, take the brunt of the pressure under towing loads. Now, the front differential is a little bit different. That actually requires a 75/85, so a little bit thinner on the front diff. Since it's not being used as much, I think you can get away with running 90, but, you know, you are going to get worse fuel economy and almost no benefit, you know, running the thicker oil. So on the front diff, it's recommended to go with the 75W85, but still going with the red line. You know, same brand, just slightly different viscosity. And of course, like always, when you're underneath the car, you definitely want to check out, you know, other things that are going on. And one of the things that I noticed right off the bat is my rear ARS stabilizer. You can see right there, there's a lot of fluid starting to leak through this thing. And there's also a lot of nasty rust and corrosion. And if you look over here, This bushing also just looks like a complete piece of shit. It's just in bad shape all around, guys. So this is something I definitely want to replace. I also want to check out these, hydraulic fluid lines. You see there's a lot of corrosion on them. They might have to be replaced, but if the interconnectors are good, and the O-rings are replaceable, then what I might do is just use some rust eater. There's like some stuff that I have, this liquid that you can just put on rust and it just eats up all the rust. Maybe put some penetrating oil in there and just clean it up a bit to see if I can, get these back up to good condition. And then if the O-rings are replaceable, then I will go ahead and disconnect this and get a new rear ARS, put in this car. And I actually saw a bunch of them on eBay, man. You get them used for like, I swear to God, $50 or less. And although they're not brand new, they're a hell of a lot cheaper than brand new ones. I think brand new ones are like, a few $100s at least. And even the ones that I saw online, they had really nice bushings. Like the whole setup just looked really great. And, normally with something like this, it would be something that I would spend a lot of money on, going with a brand new OEM. But here's the thing. Used OEM is pretty awesome, in terms of the value proposition. And since this is not a difficult part to get to at all, I mean, it's literally hanging right off the back of the car. This is not difficult. I can even get this thing out without having to touch the exhaust. And it also gives me an excuse to go in and replace the sway bar links, since that's obviously how the stabilizer connects. I don't know if you can see them, but yeah, there's my sway bar link hanging there in the back. I can check the condition of those bolts, but they look like they're in really good shape. But obviously with new sway bar links, I'll get those new bushings in there. And I've actually been kind of excited to look into some aftermarket options. Get some real beefy ones. Something a little better than OEM, and they're probably going to cost less as well. And again, with the right tools, this is not a hard job to do. So I can get a whole new stabilizer in there, or at least a much better condition used one. Get these old trashy bushings out, get new sway bar links installed on this thing, and the car again. This is going to be in such better shape, and for like almost no money. It's like unbelievable, guys, how much money you can save. And that's really like the great thing, like this whole thing just kind of started with me when I was like quoted like $400 to do oil changes on my two M3s. And then I started doing the math, and it's like for $400, not only could I buy all the oil and filters and everything that I need, but I can also buy like 2 jacks and jack stands and like just all this other, tool stuff. That would, allow me to get the job done and a ton of other jobs too. And I'm still coming out ahead on money. It's crazy, and I'm like, all right, well, I would rather do that. Tools are always useful. You never know when you're going to need tools, to do this kind of work. So, I just kept kind of doing that with every job. And the next thing you know, you got a whole ton of tools, and, jobs get easier and easier and easier. And then you can just save thousands and thousands of dollars. And then you can use all of these, savings to apply to getting new parts for the car, and you've got the tools to do the job. So might as well, let that work to your advantage, swap out steering lines, swap out stabilizers, do unnecessary changes potentially of fluids, because, you may not even know the condition of them, but who cares? It gives you an excuse to get in there, see what's going on. And, you'd be surprised how many of these jobs you can tackle on your own and save yourself thousands of dollars, and keep these older generation BMWs on the road. And let me tell you guys, these things are worth keeping on the road. I could make maybe another future video talking about, how I feel about the new generations of BMWs that are coming out, but I don't have very many good things to say about them, to be honest. So to me, it's really worth it, to put in the time and effort. And, it gets cheap even, when you consider, how many miles these things have and how well you can keep them running with just a little bit of work. But in any case, that is pretty much it for this video update. Next video update, we're going to be moving forward in the drivetrain and checking out the transfer case and the procedure for dealing with that, since it is unfortunately a little bit more involved. So stick around for that. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you all soon.